Hello and welcome to the 5th Europe Jazz Network webinar in this second series. This one is called Fly Me to the Moon, and we're exploring what will change for the international mobility of artists after COVID-19. I'm Martel, Ollerenshaw, and I'm a creative producer, and I'm also a board member of the Australian Music Centre and the Vice President of the Europe Jazz Network. Very pleased to be here with everyone today. So we're talking about building new models for international touring and exchange once we're able to move again. And we'll also explore what's going on in a time where we're really concerned about our impact on the environment. I really like the title of this session, Fly Me to the Moon. I'm a big fan of the Mel Torme version of this song, and it reminds me of a joke, or actually probably a gentle ribbing, as we'd say in English, among today's musicians, that if there were a gig on the moon, then the Swiss trombonist Samuel Blaser would have it. Sadly, no one's going anywhere, certainly not to the moon. But today we have another Swiss musician with us. We'd like to welcome Ramon Landolt of trio Heinz Herbert, among other ensembles. We also have Noor Al-Habash, a music journalist and the export manager at Italia Music Export.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. We have Virgo Sillamaa, a former musician and the CEO of Music Estonia, and now a staff member at the European Music Exporters Exchange. And Simone Dudt, the Joint Secretary General of the European Music Council. So welcome everybody, and welcome to our audience at home.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So let's start with our speakers and their relationship to this topic. Ramon, as the grounded touring musician amongst us, with trio Heinz Herbert, you've had a few really successful years of touring in Europe, and last year you won the first edition of the Zenith Award, which is a prize associated with the EJN and the 12 Points Festival, and part of this prize is a tour in Europe, which is produced by our friends at the Improvised Music Company in Dublin. And I understand that you've only been able to complete 2 live gigs as part of this tour because of COVID restrictions, but that you've been busy with online activities. But perhaps you can tell us about your experiences in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. I think you summed it up very well. We had in 2020, we played about 10 to maximum 15% of what we would play normally in a year. And we found ourselves in this swimming in time and space after all the work has been cancelled, and tours has been postponed. So we hope that the Zenith tour could happen in spring, and some other shows though have been cancelled with no substitutes. Maybe from perspective as a musician, what has been so interesting and also a bit scary, I must admit, is finding each other suddenly having so much time to ask how the music business, or how I myself has been acting in the music business so far. And I think this has been a very important moment for the band, trio Heinz Herbert, with Dominic and Mario. Together we realized that the time to create, to rethink, to try to find new ways, new approaches to music, and to be able to do this collectively, as maybe all the musicians had so much time, has been a huge benefit to our music making. So I'm kind of trying to bring some positivity into this difficult year too. And then there has been, I think 80% of the concerts we did and the festivals were digital. And I don't know whether this now is the moment already to talk about this format, but I maybe just would like to summarize that I think there is a big importance in seeing this possibility in a new way of presenting music. And with the band, we created kind of a trilogy series where we wanted to present the so-called deceleration music with the aim to give a sonic experience to what has changed the world overnight. And we realized that there were possibilities in this digital format that maybe we couldn't have achieved with a regular analog tour. So I think these are a bit the sides of experience, so cancelled concerts. And from a economical perspective, of course, I must say the loss of money and less income. Yes, definitely.
Yes, and we'll come. Thank you, Ramon. We'll come back to that actually, because that's a really big deal. There's loss of income. There's mental health and well-being attached to that. There's all sorts of things. So you're at the coalface of what's going on here, aren't you? Thanks, Ramon. Yeah. So, Noor, I'd like to introduce Noor Al-Habash, who's from the Italian Music Export. Now, Noor, I've been to Italy many times and love the Italians for their hospitality. And in jazz circles in the last few years, there's been a lot of activity around Italian music export with showcases and networking events, which have all been wonderful ways to experience the great music and the great hospitality and the beautiful scenery and the lovely Italians. Specifically, however, the fantastic musicians in Italy who deserve to be experienced live in other territories. So just like we've been, like Ramon has described, he hasn't been able to go very many places. And what he didn't say, though, was that he lives in a small territory, and it's really imperative that musicians are able to play abroad to bring in additional income, because the territories themselves can't sustain them. And this is one of the reasons why lots of countries have music export bureaus. So I was wondering if you could tell us about your experience with COVID, please.
Yeah, so Italy is a big country, and we also have fair, vibrant music industry. So for our musicians and music professional, it's not that vital to go and work abroad in order to have an income. But if you think about it, that is the reason why a music export office it's vital, because we have to push our musicians and our music professionals to work and network with people from other countries, from Europe and Asia and Africa and the Americas. So what we have done during this strange period is to try and keep doing our job, which has have not been that easy as an export office, as a small export office as we are. We're just a team of 2 people, but we are really resourceful. So from the very beginning, we try to support the musicians, first of all, because many of them had already booked, flights, hotel reservations, and already planned tours around the world. So we refunded them with the expenses they have, that they already had. And while this may seem as a simple thing, it wasn't from an administrative point of view, and also to respond that quickly, because we did this in early March. So at the very first beginning of the pandemic. So that was the very first thing we did, and we felt it was the most important thing to assure that our musicians and music professionals had their expenses refunded. And then in the following months, we tried to understand which was exactly our role as music exporters. As many people did, we developed series of online seminars, free ones, of course, for the Italian music industry regarding how to move in the music industry during a pandemic. So how to reach for a new label. So how to pitch your music in these strange times, how to do music promotions abroad online from your home. Again, this may seem like a very simple thing, but at the end of the day, it was really useful for our music community, and it enriched them and also gave a special kind of hope that there was some light at the end of the tunnel. And also we tried to develop 2 new export programs. One was an export accelerator program. So we try to follow the career of 3 to 5 musicians on a step-by-step basis. So we actually arrange for them business meetings basically and help them, go through these hard times. And another thing we did was establish a special fund for music promotion, of course, promotion of Italian music abroad, so Europe and the rest of the world, online promotion. So that was really feasible during these months because many artists and teams decided to publish music anyway, which was a really good thing, beside the, economical outcome. And so we just decided to support them. And so we tried to, try some new programs. And for next year, we're ready to try some more and, continue the ones that had really worked out well. And also we're looking forward to, exchanging best practices with other music export office in Europe. And I'm so happy that Virgo is in the conference today, because he's been, talking with all the music export offices, so he can surely tell us more about the resilience that we showed during these strange months.
Thank you. You're not the only person who's excited about Virgo Sillamaa being in the screen today. I'm a big fan also. Like I'm a big fan of Mel Torme, I'm a big fan of Virgo. And what I know about Virgo is that he's just moved from Tallinn to Brussels during the pandemic, which is no mean feat, and that you're studying as well as being a new staff member at the European Music Exporters Exchange. An association for music export organisations. What I also know about you, Virgo, is that you're fantastic in seeing patterns that are emerging anywhere in any sort of sector. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, patterns. Yes, thank you. Glad to be here as well. And as Noor concluded, it's true. I have been talking to all of the EMEE members, of which there is 28 at the moment. So I've been talking to 27 of them. One still remains to be talked to. And I have been mainly asking about just trying to profile the organizations and also asking about their expectations of how to develop EMEE as an organization, because it's fairly new as a network, and we're very much building it as we go. But I also talked about, and I asked about the COVID crisis and the kind of impacts it has had on the organizations themselves, but also how they have been pushed into deal with it in their local, national, or regional environments. And actually, there are some patterns there. It's true. Even though I haven't been really doing an analytical, conclusive note or brief or anything yet. It's just from my memory at the moment of these discussions. And I think one of the takeaways that could be brought from this experience, these talks, is that it's very clear that, as some recent research also shows, the imbalance of how well the music industry ecosystem has developed in European countries is quite large. So it's very different. In certain countries, it's very well developed, like in UK, for example. In many of the East European countries, it's not well developed at all. And what that usually means is that large parts of the music sector, whether it's the artists operating independently, whether it's the managers, if there even are any, whether it's the venues, whether it's publishing companies, or all kinds of music companies, are not very well organized. And when times are good, it's okay. They've figured out ways to work. Of course, there's much to be done, developed, and it needs a lot of policy support in the future, etc. But when the crisis hit, there was like zero redundancy, very little resilience. So the crisis really hit very strongly, and so all these professionals in very many countries found that they've lost their livelihood. First came the digital turn that took away the recorded music income and revenues, and as we very well know, over the last years, performing live has been the main source of revenue for independent artists and for small music companies. And now this was taken away as well, and there was almost nothing and nowhere to fall back on. And so in many of these countries, the export organizations, being the only ones, or nearly the only ones, having any contact with this private music industry or independent actors in the sector, etc., jumped in and had to start improvising rescue missions, whether that means doing advocacy or lobby towards the government, or gathering information and helping the sector professionals just to understand what's going on and keeping them informed and so forth. And of course, for the organizations themselves, for many of them, this was a totally new role to step into. And I can also speak from my experience from Music Estonia. This happened to us as well. So overnight we turned into this advocacy organization that we surely had not been before. And these challenges have, of course, raised a lot of new questions. And also, I think one of the important questions is, will these changes in the sector remain permanent, or we somehow just fall back into the old ways of doing business and so on? And so until now, I think the other important pattern which seems to come out of this through the feedback of all these export organizations from the countries is that the music sector, also in those countries where until now it has not been well organized, it's now organizing by force, so by necessity. There's very little to do otherwise. So they're coming together, launching new organizations, whether these are artist associations, representative organizations, trade associations for labels or publishers, etc., etc. And very often it's the very same export offices that then kind of operate in between of the independent music community and the government, for example. So maybe that's, I think, one of the very important key takeaways from these experiences. And of course, now, let's say, an important assignment or a challenge for EMEE as a network is to figure out how we as a network can support these organizations by sharing, by helping the organizations share the best practices, as Noor said as well, and to learn from each other, and to become more resilient as support structures for the sector. So maybe that's one takeaway from this crisis area. And also, as Noor mentioned, many of the organizations had to figure out how to spend the money that they had to give out the touring grants or to support the artists in other ways. Now that the organization, that the events did not happen, the tours didn't happen, how do you then make use of the money in a way that's still useful for the musicians, for the artists, for the professionals? So, and there's of course many approaches, and I think Noor gave good examples of some that were taken.
Thanks. Patterns, nice. Now, Simone, thank you for waiting so patiently. So what we've seen is that live's gone. People have been working at pace to reinvent, and we haven't mentioned the digital pivot today yet, or in so many words, the digital pivot, but we did mention it in the sound check. And so what I'm interested in understanding from you, Simone, is how this digital pivot has worked for you at the European Music Council. You know, you're in charge of advocacy and policy. So how has that manifest for you?
You mean having to be thrown to do everything in a digital area? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you say, the EMC, European Music Council, is not primarily focusing on mobility or touring, but being a network of music networks across Europe with 75 members from 28 countries, we see, of course, the broader picture of how this has affected the music sector. And it's, of course, been devastating, not only for touring, but for all aspects of the music world. And of course, we had in our pre-talks, we quickly talked about this this shift, exactly what Virgo was also saying, musicians from trying to cope with the shift to the digital, focusing back more on touring and on the live industry, making your money out of gigs. All of a sudden, this big revenue stream for musicians has now been, put away with the COVID-19 crisis, which is, of course, really difficult. And then there is, of course, the alternatives coming up. And I think Ramon will probably tell us later about some of his ideas more, to have live streams. And I think a lot of musicians you could see across Europe and worldwide, I mean, this is international, you could see that they were super happy to do live streaming, to put concerts online, everything. But the key trap here is it will not make up for any lost revenue that you could potentially have with a so-called conventional, normal live gig. So, I mean, fair remuneration in the digital world, in the streaming world, I think we still, this will be a thing that we definitely have to work on for the future, because I think coming out of the COVID-19 crisis, whenever and in whatever way, streaming will still remain a part then of our new future. But I think it will be very important that the streaming will also provide fair revenues for the artists, for the musicians. So this is one thing. And of course, on another level at the EMC, we are very much working like Virgo was also saying, on advocacy issues. So we have been very happy because we did that already before. But what we could see, I mean, if we want to take something positive out of it, which is definitely difficult to do, but we could really see how this has brought the cultural scene, I mean, and the music sector, but also the wider cultural sector really closer together. I think you could have talked about a lack of solidarity between the different countries in Europe, between political decision makers, whatever, but you could see a big, strong solidarity amongst the cultural people, musicians, theater people, artists, whatever. And so it was really good. I think we have never written in the history of the EMC so many joint advocacy letters to really make a stand for music and for culture, for the creative people, to really say, look, these are the ones that are really hit hard. And unfortunately, at least also at the beginning, those, hit hard first, but then also quickly forgotten. But I think we were successful in really gaining momentum and saying, look, but this is important. Music is important. It is part of our lives. It is giving meaning to our lives, let alone from all the tragical impact on the music ecosystem with all the revenues, breaking away the income streams. But I mean, especially in Italy, the first wave was so hard. Italy was hit so hard with the first wave of Corona, but you could also see the balcony singing. And I think everyone was really touched about that. So you could have these two angles of music, as a big industry with a lot of revenues coming in, now all of a sudden missing, but with music also giving meaning to people's life, offering comfort and consolidation. And I think this was something to bring together very, very nicely in that. And so this solidarity was really kept up, I think, among a lot of European networks, just such as Europe Jazz Network, European Music Exporters Exchange, Culture Action Europe, EMC, and I think some good was also, there were some good outcomes. I mean, you never know which was the final, thing that made things happen. But for example, now at EU level, the Creative Europe budget, the future budget for funding culture is now at 2.4 billion euro. okay for 7 years, but I think at the beginning it was something between 1.6 and 1.8. So I think that was a success, and I think it helped that we stood together and maybe raised this awareness during the crisis. You never know, it's a puzzle. You don't know which was the final, making or the final break, to make it work. But I think working together always helps.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's true. And it's been the same with, well, as you say, with the networks. And our own network, the Europe Jazz Network, has been very focused on the members and what we're doing. And we've done a lot of activity that we wouldn't normally, not a lot of activity online that we wouldn't normally do as quickly in any given year. So that's very true what you say. And you've actually opened up a whole range of things there. You've touched on political and institutional responses. And then, of course, the other responses, the artistic and the operator, which you and Virgo particularly touched on there. So we'd like to come back to Ramon. And Ramon, I've got 3 things I would like you to talk about, but they're all sort of tied into what you're up to, actually. So one is what you think,
Okay.
one is what you've been doing to combat the fact that you can't go out. And I know that you've done a beautiful piece that was premiered, I think, at the EFG London Jazz Festival in November. And I want you to sort of dovetail that with how you're building audiences, and also to how that might have an impact on the environment, because I know that you're very concerned about touring and the environment. So I think that you just need to tell us about what you've been up to, really, because it will all sort of fold into those things.
Thank you very much for asking this. I think we realized we had this very interesting experience when we did, my rehearsal space is 5 minutes from my home, and we produced in one day 2 concerts for 2 different festivals. And we went there at afternoon and finished at 6 and had a dinner together. And then we thought, how can it be that we still go or fly or travel far for one show to present their 40-50 minutes of music in a digital area where we can reach the whole world? So I think the conclusion is not as easy as that, but we, I think, as the musician, realized to have a wish that there must be also in the future, in the post-COVID crisis, a format where kind of a digital touring can also coexist with an analog touring. For example, a fantastic idea would be that if we would play at the festival, for example, in a northern European country, that instead of traveling back or traveling further to another show, that there would be a possibility to play maybe the next day a digital show, to broadcast the show and to reach a different kind of audience that wouldn't compete with an analog audience of a festival. I think this has been an idea we've been discussing with the band, and I think the other members of the webinar have pointed this out. I think it is really important that we also focus on the networks and the funding bodies, because of course there are ticket prices, but there is also a huge amount in fundings, and I think it will be very interesting to convince those bodies that this kind of digital touring is worth to support, and so that it can grow and also maybe in the future economically make sense, especially if we would see on what we pay for travel, on what somebody in the world is paying for ecological damage. If we consider all these topics, I think then there might be a way to include this. And I think maybe to summarize, what I really would go for is a more holistic approach towards touring, so that not only my dissemination of work is in the center, but there are also aspects arts that are maybe little details, but definitely interconnected, such as socio-cultural environment, personal well-being, well-being of all the people involved in this tour. And I think once we, from all different sides of the industry, could acknowledge this, I think it would also be easier to take a decision. Do I fly out to this festival for just 50 minutes of music, or do I maybe stay at home?
50 minutes of music, but a nice fee hopefully attached to it. So it's about also about a livelihood, isn't it? The Europe Jazz Network. I'll just check in since we're halfway through. I'll just check in and say that it's the Europe Jazz Network webinar called "Fly Me to the Moon." And we're talking about new models of touring and cultural export, creation, or dissemination post-COVID. And I'm interested, I might go to Virgo now, because just to pick up on one of Ramon's points there, the thing about, do you stay or do you go, in terms of performance. But I know that you're studying closely economic models of for artists, and I know that you've got some information up your sleeve about Patreon, the US fundraiser crowdfunding. So would you mind talking to us about that and any other things that sort of tie into other ways for musicians to make money if they're unable to travel?
Okay, so it's true. I've mentioned this platform Patreon, which probably you all know anyway. It's been around for a while. I've mentioned this a lot over the past year when I've participated in talks like this. And it's mainly because when we talk about a potential post-COVID musician or artist career or business strategy, like where does the actual revenue come from, then obviously some touring will resume, physical concerts will resume. But as Ramon, I think, very rightly pointed out, once we get rid of COVID, and let's hope we do very soon, then we will be faced with other very urgent issues. And of course, climate is one of them, and maybe the chief one of them. And Europe recently committed to climate neutrality by 2050, and at least 55% of greenhouse gas lowering levels by 2030, etc. There's the whole Green Deal movement and initiative. We have to start to think about the green aspects of everything, and I think touring and mobility is among that. And also, I think one thing that we've all learned from this staying at home during the crisis is that not all digital connectivity is bad. Of course, we're totally tired of Zoom or whatever video channels, and we really do miss going out to have a beer, with some friends over in the corner pub. But I think we've realized also that there's a lot of more work-related, more technical, administrative communication that we best do in digital, because we don't have to move, we don't have to spend time and energy, but also that there can be upsides to enjoying art over the digital channels. And I think I think Ramon also mentioned that this is a new art form, a new kind of medium. And over the pandemic times, artists rushed to all kinds of video channels and put up like just mic somewhere and video camera somewhere and did lives. There was no remuneration. Nobody could have the time to even think about, how do I get it paid from this? It's almost not possible. Also, nobody really has the tools at home to produce a really good live show. So over the nearly a year now, the quality has started to increase. And I think more and more, and very much so from Ramon's video, which I also watched, but you also mentioned Martel, the artists are realizing that showcasing your music through video medium, even if it's produced live stream or if it's pre-produced, it's a different kind of medium, different kind of art form. So we have to basically invent a whole new This is real live concert in a club. This is recorded music that you can listen to from a CD or digitally, but this is now video and a live stream, live concert medium, which is new. And basically what you wanted to ask me to talk about Patreon. So what I've been saying before as well, and I would like to say now as well, that in terms of the remuneration side, we will be for a long time faced with the problem that the digital channels will not produce revenue that will be thought of as fair by most of the artists. There's a lot of money in digital, but it's just not distributed evenly, and it never will be distributed evenly because it will be based on the consumption shares as well. However, I think there will be new ways of building a direct relationship, perhaps with your fans or with your audiences. And I think Patreon is a nice example of that. And for those who do not know what that is, it's a platform that allows for patrons to follow whoever you want to follow and basically donate monthly fees. And I think it's not been used that much by musicians, artists as of yet, but it's quite big among other kinds of fields of professionals. And I personally, for example, I'm a patron of an Estonian jazz club, Philly Joe's, which is in Tallinn. They went on Patreon right when the crisis hit, and proudly paying my very small membership fee every month or donation. And also, I am following a US-based music industry researcher and analyst, Sherry Hu, who writes really well and really interestingly about everything to do with music and tech. So if you really want to know about what will be the digital music world like after COVID and in the future, then you should follow her and read her stuff, because I think she's really at the state of the art edge with these kind of things. I'll just wrap up here now, because I think I've talked about many things. I'm not sure if I've talked about what you wanted to talk about.
No, it's very good, thank you. And on your recommendation, I also started following Sherry Hu, and what's been fascinating about that is that how much time she has to devote to new content and keeping her satisfying, her patrons. Actually, it's a lot of work that she has to do every week, it seems, but the interface and the dissemination of information is a very sophisticated way. So it's in my diary. They're able to sort of capture, get inside your life so that you don't forget about it, which is a pretty interesting approach. Noor, I would like you to, if you wouldn't mind, if you could tell us how this type of activity, which is sort of a pattern now, moving with the artists moving towards a greater engagement with online activity, and if something like Ramon said, which was and which our president Wim Webers has commented on in the chat, about a double bill of live and digital, how would an export office respond to that? Would that be something that would be attractive to an export office?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's funny that Virgo mentioned Sherry Hu, because that's what I've been doing from the beginning of the pandemic. I've been following her, and I became her Patreon too. And her analysis on the music industry and the technological side and how it was changing during the first months of the pandemic helped me a lot in my work as an export officer, because I had the chance to analyze in depth what was happening. And so what we understood is that doing an online show, whether if it's live or if it's recorded, it's not something as a concert, a normal live show, but online. It's something completely different. And so if musicians and bands approach this kind of medium the same way they would approach a regular show, it won't work. I mean, you would you will just, you know, be playing in front of your computer or camera, and maybe a few hardcore fans will follow you, but it won't get you any far, both in terms of fans engagement and revenue. So the concept at the base of online shows, it's actually kind of simple. So the same kind of work that you put into normal live shows in terms of you know, press, PR, and yeah, the whole work you do before a show, you have to do the same before an online show. So you have to be consistent. You have to find ways of approaching new fans and new territories. You have to do it very often. So you cannot, you know, do just one live show every, I don't know, 5 months, because it probably won't work. So this is something very new to us as music exporters, but also to musicians and managers, and also to fans, because it's not an, you know, regular experience be sitting in your on your sofa and watching a concert. I tried it myself a couple of times, and it's not easy to find the right atmosphere and the right moment to, you know, enjoy this kind of content. So I think this is something that needs a little bit of research at this moment, and also we have to try and see what works and what doesn't work, because it also depends a lot on the music genre and the focus audience and what are their habits. And besides that, as export offices, so we have tried to give advice and to share this knowledge we got from Cherie Hu, but also from other music journalists online and researcher. We have shifted our funds from you know, flights and hotel refunds to money to produce live videos. So again, a very concrete way of supporting musicians. So we are actually participating to many showcase festivals online, and we give money to musicians and music professionals to record live music, to record live shows, and try to do so in the best possible way. And also another thing I would like to say about what Ramon was telling about the mix of online and offline shows, which would be you know, a nice solution for the future. I totally agree with this, and I would like to mention an example. A month ago, we participated to a Taiwanese showcase festival named Lookfest. And fortunately for them, they are you know, holding they are organizing live concerts in Taiwan now. So they had a part of the showcase festival live with local bands, and a part of the showcase festival with concerts by artists from all over the world, which were shown and broadcast into a cinema. So people would get into a cinema and, you know, see live music in front of a huge screen. And I felt like that was a really nice mix of online and offline showcase, and also the opportunity to play in the other side of the world with you know, very small money. It has to be taken into consideration, because it's a great possibility, you know. Approaching the Asian market, it was off limits for us last year for, you know, budget reasons, and this year it was possible. So we just put a small foot on the door, and it was really, you know, nice, both from our side as music exporters and also from the artist point of view.
Thanks. That's really interesting, because a couple of things that I wanted to pick up there was that, yes, our address books have been expanded this year with, now we all know who filmmakers are, good filmmakers for making music, good directors for directing music videos. Everyone knows now how to, you know, the EJN, for example, for this and for many other things we've done this year, have turned themselves into a broadcaster. So it's a very interesting expansion of skills and networks and information. I think we might also have some things to learn from the worlds of opera and theatre, which have already been doing filming and then disseminating their work in exactly the way you described there, Noor. You know, the Metropolitan Opera, for example, you know, you can go, it can be broadcast in, performed in New York, and you can watch it anywhere else. You go to a cinema and you watch it. So, and the theatre has been able to do that too, particularly in London where I am. The National Theatre's been doing that through the lockdown. So Simone, with your policy hat on and your advocacy hat, could you ruminate on what we're talking about here? Actually, isn't I mean, it is, if you draw a long bow, it is music touring, but it's not actually a musician getting on a plane and going somewhere. It's actually their information and their copyrights going other places. And do you think that in touring, in funding terms, that this is something that there's much of an adjustment to be made in funding and policy and advocacy terms, or do you think that actually it will be enveloped quite easily?
Oh, well, I think a lot will have to be adjusted and will have to be adapted, because I mean, if I follow you and listening closely to what all of you have been saying, I mean, this whole notion of, you know, transmitting the way you work as a musician in this Corona times is, oh, can you still hear me? I don't know.
We can, but
it's really changed about communication. I'm very
No, I'm sorry, Simone. We've lost you for the minute. So we'll move on to something else while Virgo.
Can I maybe comment while we get Simone back on some of the same issues? I think something that was mentioned about, and also it came from Wim through comments, that the double bills, that we talk about the venues, and you mentioned the Met, and it's true, Met's been doing that for a while, but now we're looking at thousands of small venues that actually need to think, how will I be ready to organize double bills? And that means technical capacity, and I think that's one area where policy can come in and help, because many of the smallest venues will never reap the revenues to invest for these kind of technologies and basically capacity to run these kinds of. And many of the jazz venues, as we know, are very, very small. And I think that's one area that we should think on national level and also maybe on European level, that we need to get the venues equipped and ready to be able to offer artists these kinds of possibilities. Because I think there are several interesting possibilities hidden in the double bill system, where the artist can maybe get, one thing is, of course, the venue and the artist post can sell digital tickets, but you might get a really good live video back and use it elsewhere afterwards as an artist and so forth. And the other very quick mention is also that I just wanted to highlight, that it was mentioned that, I think Noor said that the digital world requires almost a constant stream of content in order to stay relevant, to stay visible. And that, of course, puts the artist, in, especially touring artist, in a very different kind of a sense of timing. Very important in jazz, right? So you need to maybe adjust your creative flow, because you can't maybe sit 3 years on one album and then do something large with that one album. You need to be able to more regularly give out your something to your fans who are expecting it. So I think, yeah, these small changes, and I think maybe the venue thing for policy area is an important thing to note and take away from these times.
Thanks. Yeah, and many of the Europe Jazz Network members have, or a few, I shouldn't say many. A few of the Europe Jazz Network members have that capability. And when the first lockdown happened, they were able to offer that service to musicians who are living where they live, and so that we saw results of that. So that is true. Yeah, the investment so it's the investment in time, the investment in hardware, the investment in new skills. There's lots and lots of investment and opportunity going on. So Simone, did you want to pick up on any of that now that I think you're back with us?
I hope I can be back with you. I'm not sure what's happening here. My internet is obviously unstable. I'm very sorry about that. So just what I wanted to pick up is exactly a little bit what Virgo was also explaining. I think it's really it really needs new business models, new ways of working, because I mean, if you look at Patreon, because I've also followed a musician there, it's really interesting because you see that they put a lot of content on all the time, and it's exactly how the world of communication is changing. I mean, we easily, let drop this notion or the term social media, but this is what it's all about. It's about this social and personal interaction. So of course, as a band or as a individual musician, you will have to create a persona around yourself and stories, and this is what you feed your followers, your fans with. And this is a real different story, I think, or it's a new way. It's not a complete different story. You just want to hook up to your fans, and this is a new way of doing it. And of course, I think those that are really active, not all the posts will come from them personally, but it has the look like it does. So I think definitely yes. So because trying to follow up your question, yes, things will change, and things will change after and with, and it already starts, of course, to change with the COVID-19 crisis. And now I will try to make the link to the policy topic now, because I mean, talking about European Union funding for music, there is a current preparatory action. Now I'm getting a little bit technical, which is the Music Moves Europe program. So this is a preparatory action that the European Union has started to test new funding models for the music sector, and especially to implement a music funding system in the new Creative Europe program that will start 2021 and will last for 7 years. And so the very last bit of this Music Moves Europe funding scheme is on finding sustainable ways or support for the music ecosystem out of the Corona crisis. And the idea, and it's an open call, EMC, we have applied for it with the support of also a lot of other music networks like EJN and EMEE. So we have applied for that, but we don't know it. Whoever will get this will have to, it's never mind who it will be, will have to develop projects or fund projects in an exemplary way to find ways out of the crisis in a green, in a digital, and in a just and resilient way. So it's 2.3 million that will be redistributed into projects. It will start sometime next year, latest by July. And I think the whole idea, of course, with 2.5 million who will not save the music system or the music ecosystem in Europe, for sure not. It's at tiny little bit, but I mean, the chance hopefully being to really test what can be new models, what can work, what is important for green touring. Is it really that all the musicians, bands do not tour anymore, or do we have to find also the mindset in the listeners, the watchers, those that go to big festivals, the festivals themselves? So I mean, it's a whole, I mean, a lot to discuss about green, a lot to discuss about digital, and how fair, or what we were just talking about, how to really connect to your audience. What about the just and resilient idea? I mean, all the added good, I mean, good in a way of really good that music and music interaction can have on people, and can make people, also, survive in a crisis, or get out of a crisis. So I think this is an important tool that the European Union has launched, and it will be more in place next year. So I think that's me trying to make the connection to
that's great.
EU politics, so to say.
That's great, thank you. So for those of us in the EU, that's a very positive outcome. Might not be positive for you, Ramon, and certainly isn't positive for me, but it's positive for everybody else on the panel. I also just wanted to pick up there on the importance of the audience, and another part of my practice is to devise development programs for emerging musicians, and this is how I know Ramon, because he was on one of these programs last year. And I can never we can never overestimate the amount of how important it is for musicians themselves to have access to their audience and to build their audience and to communicate with their audience. It's a very, very important aspect. So I think what this has done is it's a continuation of that thought and that imperative, but it's fast-tracked it. Because now we know we need to have our audience, you know, with a click, with one click, at the end of our MailChimp, or at the end of a StreamYard or a YouTube or something like that. We know they need to be there. So the way that to communicate with those is very important, but also in the hands of the musician. So it's another thing for them to do. Always something for the musician to do, isn't there, Ramon? Now, I think we're almost running right to our time here. And I have another question for each of you, which is a bit more flippant than the other questions that we've had that have been actually quite heavy, because it's a very heavy topic, this one, what we're going to do and what we have been doing in the COVID lockdown, when actually mobility is an imperative of the European Commission and the Union, and an imperative of people. People are on the move all the time. I would like to know the first place that you'll go to professionally once everything's over, once we're all vaccinated, and once all the borders are open, and once the flights are back in, and you know, it may not be the same as it was before, but it will have some level of freedom. And Simone, we'll start with you, since you've been waiting for us twice. So I made you wait. I'm really sorry. We'll start with you. Where do you think you will go first?
I think I will not travel that far. I will really go first to, I don't know, either the Gloria Music Club in Cologne or Gebäude 9, or I will go to see a concert when that is possible again, because I really long for that. I have to say, I don't care so much about traveling for business. I mean, I will most likely, I think, to be realistic, it will most likely be Brussels to do a little bit more advocacy work. But on the other hand, I really think it will be more music, a concert. That would be my first thing. So it's partly professional, but also private. And can I make a little, I know, I just forgot one tiny thing about my political speech. Sorry about that. But there is really one more thing, and this is because it's important for the listeners out there. The European Union has just launched the iPod for Music, which is actually a funding program for touring. And this is open now until 28th February, where you can apply as a band or as a musician, as a composer for your next tour. I mean, I know 28th February is in 2 months, and we're probably still in the middle of the crisis, but I think it only has to start in June, July. So check it out. It's iPod. It's at iPod for Music, which is supporting tours. I just wanted to make that little one, and then that will be my final words.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Noor, where do you think that you might go?
Well, I really, and I mean really, miss music festivals like a lot. So I guess the first music festival that would be possible, it doesn't matter if it's a jazz festival, classical music, or indie rock, indie pop, whatever works for me. And I will be there under the stage, because I also think that for us music lovers and people who work in the music business, or just music fans, there's a spiritual connection going on during concerts, during festivals, a sense of community, a sense of, you know, sharing emotion, and it gets so powerful. So I guess the first time it would be allowed to go, there would be an explosion of energy, and I can't wait for that moment.
So community, connection, local, festivals, music, perfect. Virgo, where do you think you will go?
So professionally, I think probably as Simone said, professionally, I will first go to Brussels downtown from where I live in Ollerenshaw, which is a very nice place. But and it's not entirely unlikely that the first time I get to travel again will be back to Estonia for Tallinn Music Week in May or something. But unprofessionally, actually, there's, you know, we walk our dog every day, and there's a pub called Two Little Devils, and every day we walk past it, and we, with my wife, and we just dream that one day it'll be open, and we just go there into this small pub and have a beer, and that would be the first time in Belgium having a beer outside of our own kitchen. I'm waiting for that.
That's beautiful. That's another part of the jazz. What's the jazz repertoire? You know, the hang, the beer at the bar, the wine at the bar. And Ramon, how about you? Where do you think you might go?
Well, I would maybe even go to a heavy metal concert, like just a really crowded place where everybody's sweating and screaming and nobody has to be in fear of getting infected. I think I would go for something like that.
That's pretty extreme. Thank you, everyone, and that's been really enlightening. Before we finish, I need to announce the next seminar, which is on Tuesday, the 29th of December at 16:30 Central European Time. It's called You've Changed, and it has what has worked well and what is the future for online and hybrid festivals and events. That will be moderated by my fellow board member at the Europe Jazz Network, Kenneth Colleen from the Improvised Music Company and 12 Points, operating out of, well, we saw him yesterday and he was on his way to the west coast of Ireland, but normally he's in Dublin. And it will have contributions from Nadine de Venter from the Jazz Fest Berlin, Atcha Bar from Yellow Submarine International Music Showcase Festival in Israel, Pelin Opchin from Sirius and London Jazz Festival, and also an appearance from Jason Moran, the American pianist and composer. So that's next Tuesday, the 29th of December. But now I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Simone. Thank you to Virgo. Thank you to Noor. Thank you to Ramon. And thank you to the staff, Batista, Francesca, and Stefano for setting this up and broadcasting us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.